Now at 12:30 it's time for News Afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon, and the main headline this Tuesday lunchtime is that BL car workers have had their say, and it seems that most have voted to accept the pay deal. But at one of the big factories, Cowley, the majority came out against accepting. Shop stewards meet again this afternoon.
And the other news this afternoon, the countdown to tomorrow's shuttle liftoff is going well, though there's still some doubt about the weather. We see a submarine oil rig designed to scrape the bottom of the North Sea barrel, and we talk to the Labour right-winger who says his party may die of extremism.
First, though, BL car workers have voted by a clear majority to accept the latest pay offer from the company and return to work. At mass meetings this morning, most of them decided to reject the advice from the shop stewards yesterday, who thought the offer wasn't good enough. Workers at BL's biggest plant at Longbridge were among those voting for acceptance. Others voting for the offer were the Land Rover plant at Solihull, Llanelli, Pressed Steel Fisher at Swindon, Radford Coventry, Sherpa Vans, the body plant at Castle Bromwich and the Drews Lane transmission plant. But the two big factories at Cowley both voted against the offer, as did the Jaguar plant at Brown Lane, Coventry. The voting at Longbridge, the scene of mass picketing yesterday, was estimated to be about 6-4 for acceptance. Our Midlands industrial correspondent will be reporting shortly.
At Cowley, voting was against the offer at both the body and the assembly plants, apart from engineering workers at the body plant who voted to accept the offer. Ian Ross was at Cowley this morning.
The assembly plant meeting was well ordered, well attended and late in starting. The turnout was close to 3,000 out of 4,000, and the senior stewards from both main unions, after outlining the events of the weekend and since, recommended rejection of the offer.
The company's offer is at best a marginal improvement, as I've previously said to you, and in no way meets the requirements of our members. The senior shop stewards are of the opinion that the offer should be rejected and the dispute continued until a better offer is forthcoming from the company. All those in favour of that resolution, would you please show? And I only want one hand per person. I know I'll only get it, but Mr. Musgrove said you vote with two hands. Stand, please. Those against. I declare the vote carried.
The steward said it was 2-1, but by this time they'd heard the Longbridge result.
Well, we find it entirely incredible what happened at Longbridge this morning, because we were assured, all the Longbridge shop stewards and senior shop stewards, the mood in Longbridge was far more determined than anywhere else. And really, we find it absolutely astounding that the membership at Longbridge have accepted the company's offer, which was only a marginal improvement. And in fact, they decided to go on strike for a substantial improvement in the company's offer. They've achieved nothing.
You senior stewards will meet in Birmingham later this afternoon. What conclusion do you think now you're going to reach?
Well, I would think that it's going to be very tight now with Longbridge voting the way, the way they have done. Obviously, with the body plant and ourselves voting the way we have, and there are other factors, of course, that have voted to continue. There need to be the information need to be collated, but I would think that it looks as if he's won the day again.
Indeed, it's now almost certain that he's won again. Not that Sir Michael Edwards or any other management spokesman is saying that on the record just yet. But a stream of votes accepting the offer has been coming in: Solihull, Drews Lane, Swindon, Llanelli, Common Lane, and almost all the smaller plants. The senior stewards meeting in Birmingham at 4 o'clock will find that their overwhelming recommendation to reject the offer has been turned over by the workforce. From that, it follows that BL will unreservedly withdraw its letter to employees, threatening dismissal without redundancy payments and liquidation of parts of the business. They'll start reviewing the bonus incentive scheme and perhaps look again at the style of management which many workers believe has contributed to this latest crisis.
That report from Ian Ross. Well, as I said just now, voting at Longbridge, which was the scene of mass picketing yesterday, was about 6-4. to 4 for acceptance. Here's Peter Colborne's report.
The turnout was enormous. So great were the number wanting to attend that roads were jammed and the meeting was put off for half an hour to allow everyone to get there. The handling was meticulous. Everyone had a leaflet setting out the revised offer. The Longbridge convener went through it stage by stage.
The letter of the 12th of November.
There was no pressure, just a call to think before the hands went up.
When we take this decision this morning, we take it in the knowledge that the vote across Leyland cause will be the vote that decides it. Not in this plant, not in Cowley, not in Drews Lane. It's the vote across Leyland which will be counted at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Brothers and sisters, think carefully. We hope that you'll support our recommendation to reject the offer.
All those in favour of the resolution to reject the company's offer, please show. Against? Defeated. The resolution is defeated.
About 2/3 voted to accept and work. Yesterday's mass pickets were shown to be a minority at Longbridge. Little had been achieved.
Well, I think our workers have expressed that they need a better deal from Leyland management, that they need better wages, and I think that they've expressed that to everybody. I think the point that our people are not highly paid workers, not greedy workers, has been accepted by the public in a way that they've not accepted it for many years.
It remains for the shop stewards who called for strike action yesterday to decide this afternoon if Longbridge represents the bulk of BL, to decide to accept the offer or to decide to stay on strike. But much has changed since their meeting 24 hours ago.
The BL chairman, Sir Michael Edwards, is being given the voting figures at his London headquarters, and a spokesman said the company was still assessing the confused picture. The vote has been welcomed by the West Midlands CBI. Their chairman, who's in Eastbourne for the CBI conference, told Martin Aidney he was relieved.
Yes, we are. Of course, there's some way to go yet. The Cowley haven't agreed to go back yet, but it is a big relief because British Leyland has a marked effect on the West Midlands industry.
How much effect does it have? Of course, it's cut down in size considerably.
Well, the motor industry is still the West Midlands major industry, and although people make all sorts of comments about the numbers of job losses and so on, it is very significant because besides the household names of component suppliers, there are lots and lots of small companies subcontracting to British Leyland, and a large proportion of their turnover is with British Leyland, and if they lost it, they would be in very serious trouble.
What do you think the reasons are that the workers have accepted this? Can you speculate about that?
Well, I think it's a sense of the economic situation. We've got to bear in mind that in the West Midlands there are many, many companies who've reached wage settlements of well below the BL offer. And I have the feeling myself that the 3.8% offer is about the right level of wage settlements in the West Midlands at the moment.
What, it's sort of about the average?
Yes.
We've just heard that the Transport Workers Union at the Cowley body plant, which voted by the biggest majority against the offer, is to hold another mass meeting tomorrow morning. A spokesman said they'd be reassessing their position in the light of votes from other plants.
And now the rest of the news. The captain of the Russian submarine caught inside Swedish waters is back aboard his vessel after a 6-hour interrogation about what he was doing inside a military restricted area. The Swedes say they're still not satisfied with his explanation. Roger Wallace reports. The Swedes kept up their very visible security measures as the submarine's captain, Lieutenant Commander Piotr Gushin, went onto Swedish territory. He led the navigation officer who'd been piloting the sub when she ran aground. They were flanked by Swedish officers who took part in questioning them. The Swedish authorities also made it clear that they've not been mollified by the Russians making concessions all along the line. One official said that as far as he was concerned, the questioning of the captain was taking place a week too late. A helicopter took the 2 Russian officers to a Swedish warship for their interview. It wasn't a happy one from the Russian point of view, and the Swedes say the other questions will follow and the submarine isn't sailing anywhere yet.
At Frankfurt's main railway station, more than 1,000 demonstrators clashed with police in a protest over plans to extend the city's airport. The demonstration followed a police raid on a makeshift village of tents which had been erected in woodland earmarked for a new runway. Trains were disrupted for nearly 2 hours as the fighting spread to platforms inside the station. Ecologists are confident of forcing a referendum on the airport plan later this month.
The Foreign Secretary, Lord Carrington, is on his way to Saudi Arabia at the start of what could be a significant new move towards a Middle East settlement. As current chairman of the EEC Council of Ministers, Lord Carrington will be trying to find out if there's any basis for a common approach between Europe and Saudi Arabia on the Middle East. As it happens, the leader of the Palestine Liberation Organization, Mr. Yasser Arafat, has also arrived in Saudi Arabia today, and there's some speculation that the two men might meet. Both visits to the Saudi capital, Riyadh, come at a time when Saudi Arabia is looking for international support for an alternative to the Camp David Accords. Recent Saudi proposals, while calling for the establishment of a Palestinian state, have also hinted that they'd be prepared to recognize Israel. Israel herself has dismissed the Saudi scheme. Her Prime Minister says it's nothing but a formula for Israel's eradication by stages. And Mr. Begin was equally dismissive about Lord Carrington's visit. He told the Knesset that the Foreign Secretary should save his energy instead of running from one Arab country to another, promising that Europe would support the setting up of a Palestinian state. This time tomorrow, all being well, the Space Shuttle Columbia should be in orbit at the start of its second and history-making journey into space. At Cape Canaveral, the countdown is on schedule, and as Martin Bell reports, the only doubt is still about the weather.
It is the kind of countdown that space agency officials dream of. No unexpected problems, no backlog of work to be tackled in the built-in hold periods, no complications except the weather threatening to delay the liftoff. Before darkness last night, technicians were preparing to withdraw the rotating service structure, the web of equipment that sustains the Columbia for most of the pre-launch period. For the last 24 hours, the spacecraft will be virtually freestanding on the launch pad. It will have its final countdown, its fuel, its power, and finally, its astronauts.
We're mighty glad that we're getting this close to flying, and Dick and I are both anxious. We've been looking forward to it for a long time, and we're ready to go. We're going to tune up and polish up tomorrow out on with the STA out on the strip, and then day after tomorrow we're going to do the real thing. We thank you all very much for coming out. Let Dick say a few words and see what he'd like to do.
I'd just like to say the Columbia's ready, and Joe and I are more than ready, and we really appreciate all y'all coming out this afternoon to greet us. We're all set to go, and I couldn't thank you anymore. We're glad to see you. Thanks a lot.
Astronauts Joe Engle and Richard Truly are the second men to shuttle into space. They arrived at the Cape yesterday to be put through a series of routine flight tests and briefings today before going to bed at 5:30 in the evening, ready for a wake-up call in the middle of the night. They are both veteran astronauts, Joe Engle of more than 20 years standing, who've never quite ventured into space. But that'll change at the Cape tomorrow when the routine flying practice is over and if the weather holds. The Cape is once more, as so often in the past, in a state of countdown fever. And the nervousness that goes with that is not about the systems and capabilities of the spacecraft, but only about the weather. Martin Bell, BBC, Cape Canaveral.
And we'll be covering the final countdown and launch of the Space Shuttle at lunchtime tomorrow in a specially extended news afternoon. That'll be starting shortly before 12 o'clock, immediately following the state opening of Parliament.
With Britain's major North Sea oil reserves becoming uncommercial in the next decade, engineers have been grappling with the problem of how to extract oil profitably from fields which up to now would have been too expensive to work. After 7 years' research and development, their solution is the UMC, that's the Underwater Manifold Centre, a giant contraption capable of working at great depths outside the reach of rigs in the established fields. It's British designed, but it's been built in Holland, and Clive Ferguson has been to Rotterdam to see it.
It may not look much like a major advance in oil technology, but that's what this 2,000 tons of pipes, valves and tanks represents. It's the height of a 4-storey building and would cover half a soccer pitch. It cost Shell and Esso £340 million to develop, and it will spend the rest of its life on the seabed. drilling for oil, just as the familiar North Sea oil platforms do at present. Except the underwater manifold centre, as it's known, can tap wells as deep as 10,000 feet beneath the sea, far beyond the reach of the conventional platform.
Its utility is that it will let us go down to 2,000 feet of water depth, ultimately, as we try this and go deeper with other projects. It has direct application in smaller fields where you don't need a great number of wells to recover the reserves.
Next year, the centre will be towed to the Cormorant field in the North Sea, about 250 miles north of Aberdeen, and sunk in 500 feet of water. There it will drill into wells holding 100 million barrels of oil. All its operations run remotely from a sophisticated control room on the surface. Servicing and maintenance is also done remotely with the aid of a series of TV cameras and a 35-ton machine which will shuttle to and from the seabed. This development doesn't provide the magic answer to the Earth's dwindling energy resources. Oil supplies are limited and they'll be exhausted by early in the 21st century. But what the oil companies believe they've now enabled themselves to do is to suck the very last drop of oil out of the smallest well in the deepest ocean. Clive Ferguson, BBC, Rotterdam.
At home, the CBI has called on the government to help industry, even if it means increasing public sector borrowing. The Businessmen's Organisation, ending its two-day conference at Eastbourne, wants a reduction in national insurance surcharges and help with energy costs. Our industrial relations correspondent, Martin Aidney.
It's exactly a year since Sir Terence Beckett's controversial CBI speech about a bare-knuckled fight with the government. Today the language was less colourful, but the message no less clear. Industry must get financial relief from government, even if that means increasing that sacred cow, government borrowing. In return, it'll invest, not let wages rocket, and reduce the heavy costs of unemployment.
I believe that the government can help us, and therefore I would like to move this resolution. The resolution is that this conference believes that business has a vital role to play in getting the economy moving again, but the government should help by cutting business costs, even if this means temporarily increasing the PSBR, giving a modest net boost to demand without refueling inflation. Mr. President, thank you very much.
Now, without getting into the monkey business, at the back of some of the criticisms is the argument that we shouldn't press our proposals out of loyalty to the government. I believe that argument to be misconceived. CBI's task is to represent the views of industry, and that means industry, not just company directors. It is for government to determine its policies in the light of the representations it receives. If we fail to put industry's viewpoint squarely, we fail the government's decision-making process just as surely as we fail our own members.
Well, the resolution went through easily, and the CBI's concern about the economic situation, where it sees no hope of early improvement, was also reflected in the concluding speech, which stressed again the big worries that have surfaced here about unemployment.
Somehow the idea is getting around that we, the managers, not just the idiot fringe, think that unemployment has its role in keeping people in place. It's said of us that we are more concerned about profit and loss than we are about society as a whole. To anyone who thinks that, let me say as clearly as I can from this conference that the CBI is not in favour of people being out of work.
The High Court has ruled that the Greater London Council's decision to put the cost of cutting bus and tube fares by 25% on the rates is not unlawful. The move had been challenged by Bromley Council, which argued that London Transport had to be run on ordinary business principles. Lord Justice Dunn said it was for the GLC to choose the extent to which reduced fares were to be borne by ratepayers or farepayers.
The right-wing Labour manifesto group of MPs have issued a warning that Labour will perish as a political force if its doors remain open to the bitter winds of political extremism. In a letter to their General Secretary Ron Hayward, they asked for the left-wing militant tendency group to be excluded from the party, calling it a cancer on the body politic of the Labour Party. Well, joining us now in our Westminster studio is the chairman of the manifesto group, Giles Radici, and he's interviewed by John Sargent.
Giles Radici, these are some tough comments. Is the position inside the Labour Party really as bad as this?
No, I don't think it is. I mean, we haven't been taken over by extremists. It isn't as bad as that. But what we're really saying is this, that many electors, and we've seen some of the very poor results that we've been having over the last few months, many electors believe that we're being taken over by extremists. And when it actually happens that somebody is selected for a safe Labour seat,
this is Bradford North.
Bradford North, who is a founder member of Militant and certainly has been a member of the editorial board of Militant, well, that then becomes a test case. Are we really serious? Do we really want Labour seats to be represented and have Labour members of Parliament who are members of Militant? Now, the thing about Militant is that basically it is a party within a party. It has its own membership. It has its own sources of finance. It has an editorial board which sends out orders. And it generally acts in a rather secret manner. And it has aims and objectives, which is revolutionary socialism, which are foreign to the aims and objectives of the Labour Party. So my view is that we ought to apply our constitution, clause 2 of the constitution, which says that you can't have a party within a party, and say, look, Militant cannot be part of the Labour Party. Now, I'm not saying that we should then get rid of all people who have any association with Militant. That's not my point. I think what we're saying to them is, look, they've got to choose between being member of Militant and being member of the Labour Party. I want to have these people in the Labour Party if they're going to be genuine members of the Labour Party.
But would it really make much difference if you excluded them? Surely they would simply reappear in another form.
Well, I think, frankly, it would make a great deal of difference not to have the orders coming down from the Militant board, which do indeed come down every week. The orders come down, and then everybody acts like Pavlovian dogs. We don't want that kind of situation. We want them to be proper members of the Labour Party.
Thanks very much indeed.
And now back to the BL story. As we said earlier, the shop stewards who voted yesterday to reject the BL pay offer are meeting this afternoon to decide what to do about the results of this morning's meeting. The engineering union leader, Terry Duffy, said yesterday that he wanted the offer to be accepted because a prolonged strike wouldn't gain anything. He's now speaking to Kate Adey.
Well, let me say I'm not aware of the result. Our colleagues going up to Birmingham this afternoon to ascertain the real result. But I do hope that our members have heeded our advice to accept the recommendation that they should accept the final proposals of the company. And let me say that all of the statements that I have made have been endorsed unanimously by our Executive Council, and I do hope, therefore, that our recommendation has been accepted. But we would rather wait to see whether all the statements that we heard are authentic, and Mr. Kencure is visiting Birmingham this afternoon to get the true result.
You said yesterday that a great deal of emotion had been generated by this dispute. What do you feel the outcome is going to be? What sort of state is it going to leave you and your union members in?
Well, let me say, if the membership have accepted, I, together with my colleagues, will be relieved. I think it's sad that we've got to this precipice of negotiating, and I hope we can prevent a reoccurrence. And I certainly feel that the management, henceforth, will need to take the views of the manual workers in that plant, in all of their plants. So therefore, we're in conjecture about, firstly, what is the real result, and secondly, what's going to happen subsequently. But I'm pretty sure that there'll be no provocative statement from the management henceforth.
Now, a time check for you. It's coming up to 5 to 1.
That means it's time for today's weather, and the forecaster today, Mr. Jack Scott.
Well, good afternoon to you. The weather is very much the same in most parts of the country as it was yesterday, actually. Still a fair bit of mild weather about, still a fair bit of dry weather about. But things are on the change now, and the reason for the change, as I warned you yesterday, is this depression here. So far it's been tracking northwards. It's now going to do a little loop-the-loop and come away eastwards. You can see that it's already packed in the isobars. It's been getting lower and lower, the pressure in the centre there all the time. So winds are beginning to pick up. This cold front is on its way west in those northern areas, eastwards I mean, and it's carrying rain across the northern areas as it does so. What's going to happen, as I say, is that thing is coming in, and the cold front evermore will come in. We'll eventually all get into those colder northwesterlies, so it's beginning to look a nice day for bonfire night. It looks as though it'll be cold and clear on that particular night. In fact, the satellite picture today shows where the depression is. You can see the curl of cloud out there around the depression, almost see those strong winds blowing the cloud there, can't you? And this is the cold front, the thick cloud that's going to bring rain across most of the country, and the clearer air out here is what we'll have, I think, by bonfire night. But before that happens, let's have a look at today's weather. It's already, as I say, fairly dry most parts of the country. There are patches of rain coming into that northwestern area at the moment, and before the afternoon is through, Northern Ireland, Western Scotland will get into rather more persistent rain, and that rain will move across the rest of Scotland during the course of the afternoon, I think, and then during this evening into northern parts of England perhaps, and right down this west side of Wales and southwest England, where there isn't so much drizzle about today, or sea fog as there has been recently. These winds, though, in the west are very, very gusty up that western side, becoming very strong in the north of Scotland. And then tonight, well, still on the mild side, but a very stormy night in those northern parts of the country. Scotland having very, very strong winds indeed. The wind will have turned to westerly by then, and there'll still be some rain about. It'll be more of a showery nature. I think you'll see some clear spells coming through as well, because the cold front will be on its way through. And the rain in northern and western parts will gradually give way to clearer weather. But at the same time, of course, it'll be moving down into the southeastern part of the country. So whilst this part starts dry, it'll wind up fairly wet by the end of the night. And as I said, over the following couple of days, it does look as though it's going to turn much colder, but clearer. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much, Jack. Now, our regular financial spot. Rising hopes of a return to work at BL have kept share prices buoyant again, but that wasn't the only talking point in the city this morning, as Peter Day now reports.
You might think the restructuring of British industry is something so important that it takes place only after hard thinking and strategic planning. But very often these days, the first steps look something like an impulse buy in a supermarket. What's probably the start of a giant food merger took place first thing this morning. A sugar and flour takeover, to make cake perhaps. British Sugar Corporation, the silver spoon people, waded into the stock market and spent almost £28 million on just under 15% of the Hovis Millers' rank Hovis McDougall. It's the largest stake a buyer is allowed to pick up in a single morning under the Stock Exchange new share raid rules. Rank Hovis shares are so concentrated in the hands of big investors, such as pension funds, that in less than 20 minutes the deed was done. British Sugar are a similar size to Rank Hovis. They process all the sugar beet produced by British farmers, turning it into half the sugar eaten or drunk here. The rest is cane sugar. It is, of course, rather unfair to suggest that they dreamed up the move overnight. Last summer, British Sugar managed to repulse, for the time being, an unwelcome takeover bid themselves. It seems that they're now seeking a partner in the food processing business to ward off the threat of another takeover. There may be another bidder for Rank Hovis in the wings, though. These days, the unstoppable trend seems to be merge or be merged.
And now, the main points of this morning's news again, with subtitles. With votes now in from most of the British Leyland mass meetings, it looks as if there's a 3-to-1 majority for a return to work. But workers at 4 big plants, including Cowley, the body and assembly plants in Oxford, have voted to stay on strike. The vote to return was led by Longbridge, with a 6-to-4 majority. The plant was the scene of yesterday's mass picketing. BL haven't made any comment. They're still assessing the picture. But the West Midlands CBI welcomed the result. Shop stewards, who yesterday told the workforce to reject the offer, will review the voting when they meet this afternoon. Lord Carrington is on his way to Saudi Arabia at the start of what could be a new move for Middle East peace. The Foreign Secretary is trying to find if there's any chance for the EEC plan and the new Saudi proposals to form a common approach. The Palestinian leader, Yasser Arafat, is also due in Saudi Arabia today, and there's speculation the two men may meet.
And that's the news this lunchtime. In later programmes, we'll be looking further into the effects of this morning's votes by the workers at BL car factories, what it means for the company and the industries that rely on it. But for the moment, from Moira Stewart and myself, that's all. Don't forget to join us tomorrow a little earlier at 10 to 12.